The November wind whipped at Grace Holloway's thin coat as her 1999 sedan rattled to a stop, looking like a forgotten relic against the towering stone facade of the Greenwich mansion. Tucked inside her purse was a faded photograph of her and Isabel, taken 3 decades ago. "I'm here, Izzy," she thought. "I'll keep your promise." An impersonal voice crackled from a hidden intercom, directing her not to the grand front entrance, but to the service entrance around the back. Grace, a black woman in her 60s, merely nodded to the unseen speaker. She waited for 10 long minutes in the cold, which smelled of wet leaves and money. The door finally opened. Amelia Davenport, the fiancée, stood framed in the doorway, dressed in expensive cashmere loungewear that likely cost more than Grace's monthly rent. Her smile was bright, practiced, and did not reach her cold eyes. "You must be Grace," she said, her gaze sweeping over Grace's simple coat and worn shoes. She did not offer to shake hands. "Your references were adequate." Amelia's voice was smooth, but her words were sharp. "I'm sure you'll find our standards here in Greenwich are quite different from what you're used to." Grace, absorbing the microaggression with the quiet patience of a mountain, simply replied, "I'm a quick study, ma'am." Amelia led her into a foyer that felt less like a home and more like a silent museum, all marble and polished wood. 2 small, pale children, a boy and a girl, peeked out from behind a large potted plant. "Oliver." "Chloe." "Stop skulking," Amelia snapped. The children froze, their faces pale. Grace ignored Amelia's harsh tone and knelt, offering the children a small, warm smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you both." She noticed the little girl, Chloe, clutching her own arm so tightly her knuckles were white. A man, clearly Mr. Arthur Vance, rushed past, his eyes glued to his phone. "Can't talk, darling, the markets are closing," he muttered, disappearing up the grand staircase. Amelia's smile tightened for a second before she turned back to Grace. "As you can see, Mr. Vance is very busy. You'll report only to me." Amelia led Grace up several flights of stairs, past the luxurious guest suites, to a small, cold room in the attic, furnished with a simple iron bed and a worn comforter. "This should be fine for you," Amelia said, her tone indicating the tour was over. "We value our privacy, Grace. Remember that." As the door clicks shut, Grace runs a hand over the worn comforter. "Privacy," she whispers to the empty room, "is exactly what I'm counting on. The tension in that mansion is already so thick you can feel it." If you are still watching and you are already rooting for Grace to find the truth, please comment with the number 8 below to let us know you're here with her. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I truly recommend you subscribe to the Black King channel and turn on that notification bell. You don't want to miss what happens in Chapter 2. Your support helps us continue to create powerful content just like this to inspire you. Now let's continue. The only thing louder than the hum of the industrial walk-in freezer was the silence of the children who were supposed to be playing. Grace had spent the first few days observing, her movements quiet as she dusted the sterile, museum-like rooms. She found the children, Oliver and Chloe, often hiding in the library or the linen closet, far from Amelia's sharp, echoing voice. This afternoon, she was in the massive, stainless steel kitchen, a place clearly built for catering galas, not for family meals. Using her own small bag of oats and cinnamon, she slid a tray of simple oatmeal cookies into the oven. It was an old habit, a scent of warmth she carried with her. As the warm, sweet smell began to fill the cold air, the 2 children crept in, their eyes wide, drawn by the unfamiliar scent of home. Grace smiled, kneeling. "Fresh baked," she said softly. She gave them each a cookie, and Oliver, the little boy, looked at her and offered a tiny, hesitant smile that broke her heart. The moment shattered when Amelia entered, her phone pressed to her ear. She saw the smiles, the cookies, and her face hardened. "What did I say about sugary snacks?" she snapped, ending her call. She directed her glare at Grace. "And you. Do not feed them without my express permission." She turned back to the children, her voice dropping to a terrifying sweetness. "You 2 know the rules about bothering the help. We are going to play the quiet game until you learn your lesson." She grabbed their small arms and led them firmly from the kitchen toward the walk-in pantry. Amelia returned a moment later, alone, and immediately resumed her phone call, discussing floral arrangements for the gala, her voice light and musical. Grace, her hands tight on the counter, continued to wipe down surfaces, her heart pounding a heavy, distressed rhythm. Amelia eventually left, leaving the kitchen in an oppressive silence. It was then Grace heard it. A faint, muffled thump, thump, thump. It was irregular, desperate. She traced the sound to the large walk-in pantry. She opened the pantry door and stepped inside. The sound was louder, coming from the heavy stainless steel door of the industrial freezer, a door built to keep the cold in. A door that was latched, she saw with dawning horror from the outside. Her fingers fumbled with the heavy, cold metal latch. She pulled the heavy door open. A cloud of icy fog billowed out, followed by the two small children, who tumbled into her arms, shaking violently, their lips tinted a horrifying shade of blue. "My God," Grace gasped, pulling them close, wrapping them in her apron, trying to rub warmth back into their arms. "Who did this?" Chloe, her teeth chattering so hard she could barely speak, whispered, "Amelia, it's the quiet game. We were too loud." "What on earth is going on here?" Amelia's voice cut through the kitchen. She was standing in the doorway, her phone still in her hand, her expression one of cold, calculated fury. The confrontation wasn't a battle of wills. It was a collision of worlds, and Grace knew which world held all the power. Amelia, seeing the freezing children in Grace's arms, didn't panic. Her fury from moments before vanished, replaced by a mask of horrified concern. "Oh, heavens," she cried, rushing over. "They must have locked themselves in. Oliver, Chloe, why would you do that?" She cooed, rubbing their arms, a perfect imitation of a loving mother. Grace stood up, her 60-year-old knees aching, her voice low and steady. "The latch is on the outside, ma'am. They said you put them there." Amelia gasped, a hand flying to her chest. "You're accusing me?" Her eyes welled with perfect, crystalline tears. "Arthur," she suddenly cried out. "Thank God." Arthur Vance stood in the doorway, his face a mask of alarm. "What's going on? What's wrong with the children?" Amelia immediately crumpled against him. "Arthur, it's terrible. The children were playing and got stuck in the freezer, and now she pointed a trembling finger at Grace. "She's accusing me of." She buried her face in his expensive suit, sobbing hysterically. Arthur looked from his weeping fiancée to his new, black maid. His face, already stressed from work, hardened. "Grace," he said, his voice clipped and stern, "that is a monstrous accusation." Grace held his gaze, her own steady. "Sir, I am only telling you what the children said. They are freezing cold and terrified. They're children. They play games." Amelia sobbed from his shoulder. "Arthur, darling, I'm worried she's unstable. Maybe someone from her background just isn't equipped for this kind of environment." The implication hung in the air, heavy and toxic. It was the out Arthur needed. He saw his beautiful, wealthy white fiancée, and he saw his working-class black employee. His bias, implicit and automatic, made the choice for him. "Grace, that's enough," he said, his voice final. "Your job is to clean and assist, not to make wild, divisive accusations. Take the children upstairs, get them warm, and do not let this happen again." He turned, guiding a recovering Amelia from the room, leaving Grace alone with the two children, who hadn't said a single word. They just shivered, their eyes wide with a fear that went beyond the cold. That night, in her small attic room, Grace sat on her bed. She understood. Arthur wasn't evil. He was blind. Blinded by privilege, by comfort, and by prejudice. He wouldn't see the truth. She would have to find proof he couldn't deny. She pulled out an old prepaid burner phone from her luggage and dialed a number from memory. "Mary," she whispered. "It's Grace Holloway, Isabel's old friend. You were right to be worried." Mary's voice, rough and angry, replied, "I knew it. I knew she was a demon." "Grace, that accident?" "It wasn't an accident. You find Isabel's diary. It's in his office, I'm sure of it." Arthur just sided with his fiancée and dismissed Grace because of his own prejudice. Grace is now completely alone, but she's not giving up. She's starting her real investigation. If you are still watching this video and you feel the value of Grace's courage, Please comment with the number 8 below to let me know you are here standing with her. And if you haven't subscribed to the Black King channel yet, I truly recommend you subscribe and turn on that notification bell. Grace is about to uncover the truth, and you do not want to miss what happens next. Your support helps us continue to create this amazing content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's continue. The small, leather-bound diary felt heavier than any book Grace had ever held. It was a voice from the grave. She now operated on 2 levels, as the quiet, efficient maid and as a silent investigator. Her days were spent cleaning, but her mind was cataloging every interaction, every fearful glance from the children. Amelia, feeling untouchable after her victory in the kitchen, escalated her subtle torments. The next afternoon, Grace was in the playroom, tidying up blocks, when Amelia entered. Oliver was sitting near Grace, showing her a drawing. "Oliver, why are you playing with Grace?" Amelia's voice was light, but the question was a command. "Don't you know Mummy Isabel gets sad when you play with strangers?" The boy's face fell. Amelia knelt, stroking his hair. "Mummy left because you were bad," she whispered, twisting the boy's grief into a weapon. "If you're bad again, I'll have to leave too." Grace, standing just behind them, felt her blood run cold. She quietly reached into her apron pocket and pressed the record button on a small, slim digital recorder. Later, Amelia demonstrated her power again. She stood in the living room holding a dark green kale smoothie. "Oh, Grace," she called. As Grace approached, Amelia accidentally let the glass tip, spilling the thick, vibrant green liquid all over the expensive beige carpet. "Oh, look at this dreadful mess," she sighed. "Be a dear and clean it up. Make sure you get on your knees. I want it spotless." The command was pure humiliation, a reminder of her place. Grace simply nodded, retrieved the cleaning supplies, and knelt, her face a mask of calm servitude, the recorder still safely in her pocket. That night, she waited until 2 a.m. The house was silent. She slipped out of her attic room and made her way down to Arthur's grand home office. As Mary had said, the main desk was locked. Grace pulled a single bobby pin from her hair, an old, simple trick. She worked the simple lock, her fingers surprisingly nimble. A faint click echoed in the silence. She slid the drawer open. Nothing. Just files. Remembering Mary's words, she ran her hand along the underside of the drawer. Her fingers brushed against a small object taped far in the back. A small, leather-bound diary. Her heart hammered. She sat at the desk, using the moonlight as her guide. She flipped to the last entry in her sister friend Isabel's familiar, shaky handwriting. "I'm not depressed. I'm being poisoned. Amelia keeps giving me vitamins that make me sick and dizzy. She wants Arthur. She wants my life. If I die, it was not an accident." Grace clutches the diary and the recorder. She now has the motive, the method, and the confession. She just needs the killer to expose herself one last time. The storm outside the mansion was nothing compared to the one brewing inside the grand living room. A violent thunderstorm raged, the windows rattling as Grace stood waiting. She had placed Isabel's diary conspicuously on the mantel. She knew Amelia was due back from her charity luncheon, and she knew Arthur would be home minutes later. Amelia swept in, shaking rain from her umbrella, her face flushed with social success. She stopped dead when she saw Grace standing by the fireplace. Then her eyes darted to the diary. "What do you think you're doing in here?" she hissed, dropping her purse. "And what is that?" "It's Isabel's," Grace said calmly, her voice clear in the quiet room. "I know you poisoned her." The mask of civility shattered. Amelia's face twisted into a snarl of pure rage. "That weak, pathetic woman," she spat, lunging for the diary. "She was in my way. Just like those brats in the freezer, and just like you." Grace held her ground, her hand deep in her apron pocket, the digital recorder silently capturing every word. "You think anyone will believe you?" Amelia laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "A poor old black maid? What is going on?" Arthur Vance's voice boomed from the doorway. He stood there, soaked from the rain, his face thunderous. Amelia, a master of her craft, pivoted instantly. She collapsed into a fit of tears, rushing to him. "Arthur! Thank God! This woman," She's insane. She's obsessed with Isabel. She stole this diary from your office, and she just threatened to kill me." Arthur, seeing his weeping fiancée and that unstable maid, turned on Grace, his face a mask of old, easy prejudice. "Grace, get out," he commanded. "The police are on their way. You are trespassing." "They are," Grace said, her voice cutting through the storm. "I called them 20 minutes ago." She stood tall, and for the first time, she did not look like a maid. She looked like the authority she was. "Arthur, my name is Dr. Grace Holloway. I'm a retired child psychologist. And Isabel. Isabel was my sister." The lie was small, necessary, giving her the standing he understood. "I came here as a maid, because I knew you wouldn't believe a black woman who came to you with the truth." Amelia froze. Arthur stared, dumbfounded. Grace held up the small digital recorder. "But I imagine you'll believe this." She pressed play. Amelia's raw, hate-filled confession. "She was in my way. Just like those brats in the freezer." Filled the silent, opulent room. Amelia's face turned white. As the recording ended, she lunged, not at Arthur, but at Grace, her fingers crooked into claws. "You old bitch. You ruined everything." For the first time in a year, the great house was filled with the smell of roasting turkey, a scent of warmth that had finally defeated the cold. The flashing blue and red lights from that night had faded, taking Amelia Davenport with them. Arthur had stood shell-shocked by the fireplace, watching the woman he planned to marry get handcuffed, his entire world tilted off its axis. Grace had done only one thing. She went upstairs, woke Oliver and Chloe, who had slept through the screaming, and held them, whispering, "It's over now. You're safe." Now, 1 week later, it was Thanksgiving Day. The house, once sterile, felt different. Children's drawings were taped to the massive stainless steel refrigerator. Arthur found Grace in the kitchen, basting the turkey. He was dressed in a simple sweater, not a suit, and he looked small or humbled. He cleared his throat. "Grace. Dr. Holloway. How can I ever?" Grace paused, her hands covered in flour. She looked at him, not with anger, but with a profound, weary understanding. "Arthur," she said gently, but firmly, "you were blind. You saw what you expected to see, a black woman, a maid. You didn't see me. You didn't see her." Her eyes flickered to a photo of Isabel, now placed proudly on the mantel. That blindness is what she counted on. That's the lesson. Arthur Vance nodded, the shame clear on his face. "I know," he whispered. Later, the table was set for 4. Arthur, Grace, Oliver, and Chloe. It was quiet. Arthur raised his glass of sparkling cider. "A toast," he said, his voice thick. "To family. And to Grace, who saved ours, in more ways than one." After dinner, the children were sleepy and full. Chloe, who barely spoke a week ago, crawled into Grace's lap by the fireplace. "Auntie Grace, will you stay forever?" she whispered. Grace kissed the top of her head, her eyes on the photograph over the mantel. "Yes, child," she said softly. "I'm right where I'm supposed to be." The warmth of that Thanksgiving table reminds us that true safety is not found in wealth, but in courage and compassion. It serves as a powerful lesson that when we cast aside our judgments about what someone looks like, we make room to see who they truly are. Kindness, especially when given without condition, often has a way of uncovering the truth in the darkest of places. If this story touched your heart, perhaps consider passing that warmth along to someone in your own life who may feel unseen.